Yes, sedite. I'm the Roman Orthodox, but you can call me Roman or Magister Romanus. Either way, it's up to you. And today I have something a little more off the cuff than what I've been posting usually. So lately I've been sort of watching a lot of content from former traditionalist Catholics like myself. And I got to thinking about ways that I don't really fit in with them and why my channel is a little bit different from their content. And so today I want to talk about why I am not an ex-trad, and I'm using that term very specifically. For those of you that are new to the channel, let me just explain. A traditionalist Catholic is one who attends exclusively or primarily the traditional Latin Mass. That's the form of the Roman Catholic Mass that existed before the 1960s. And I was a traditionalist Roman Catholic for many years, for 16 years of my life, in fact. I was a Baptist before that, and I was only a Baptist for about 13 years of my life. I think it was 13 years of my life. So I was a traditionalist Catholic longer than I've been anything. And about 2 years ago, I converted to Eastern Orthodoxy, where I met my wife. And now we have a beautiful baby girl who just got baptized in the Orthodox faith, and we're so blessed to have her. And I've been using this channel to reflect on my time as a traditionalist Catholic, and also to talk about the reasons why ultimately I decided to join the Orthodox Church. So, as you can imagine, this has involved me going on YouTube, typing in the search bar, former traditionalist Catholics, and really trying to watch a lot of their content. And I have come to the conclusion that whatever they are, and I think that the general term has been an ex-trad, I am not that. And I'm going to share a few reasons why I think that on this channel, or on this video. So let's just start bare bones basic. One way that I am not like the ex-trad community is that I didn't grow up in the traditionalist Catholic faith. That's sort of basic, I know, but a lot of the people who are in the ex-trad movement, either their parents converted when they were very young or while they were still at home and they were brought up in the traditionalist movement, or they were actually sort of born into it. So they were baptized as infants in the traditionalist movement and lived most of their young life in that community. That was not me. I was raised Baptist. And so I came to it as an adult with a full sense of autonomy and freedom. And I think that makes a big difference, that a lot of the people who are making ex-trad content actually came into the movement involuntarily. And so they find themselves, being subjected to a community that is fairly strict and fairly intense in their faith. And it's not something that they really chose for themselves. And I think there's a bit of trauma that comes from that, from being sort of raised in a particular set of rules that you didn't choose, and that you haven't been convinced of like your parents were. And this, I think, is a common enough thing with Orthodox converts as well. They'll convert to Orthodoxy and they'll have been convinced by all of these, canonical arguments, theological arguments, doctrinal arguments, etc. And they come into Orthodoxy, and then they, hopefully meet a spouse and they have children, or maybe they have children when they converted, and they're going to attempt to raise their children to be Orthodox. But of course, the problem is that they're, sort of assuming that they can just bring their children along to the position that they themselves hold, right? These conclusions that came after long prayer and study, and they're really passionate about them. And they think that, and they forget that these children are children, right? That they're not going to be as enthusiastic, say, about the question of papal primacy, right? And a lot of ex-trads, it seems to me, were brought into the movement when they were younger, when their parents were sort of eager, new. Sometimes they're reverts, sometimes they're converts, and they're joining up in the movement, and they're really excited, and they try to push all of this on their kids, and it doesn't work out. And I have to admit that when I was preparing for marriage, and then later waiting for our new child, I think I would have been like this as a new parent. And the thing that saved me from it was experiencing authentic orthodoxy in the writings of the saints. And so one of the writers I picked up was St. Porphyrios in his I believe it's Wounded by Love. And what a wonderful book that is. I'll put a link in the description, actually, to where you can go buy Wounded by Love. Hopefully I got that title correct. But it's a great book. And he gives a lot of really practical advice and very useful spiritual advice. But one of the things he said is don't try to force it on your children, right? Just, let God do his thing. And be gentle with your presentation of the faith. And I think that was really useful for me to hear from a saint. And I think it would be useful for a lot of traditionalist Catholics to hear, to realize that, your kids are not converts, right? You hope that they will be. You hope that they will, at some point in their life, decide to take up, this passion and this fight for authentic Christianity. But it's not now, right? You can't make them that way. I think there's a lot of trauma that happens when parents try to or assume that their children can have the same, fight and zeal that they have. That's just not how cradle Catholic or cradle Orthodox children are. That's just not what's going to happen or how they develop. For them, you are their world. And so you have to focus on hopefully creating a world in which they grow in love and they grow in joy of the faith. And I think that not doing that causes a lot of problems. Okay, anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. But that's one difference that I have with a lot of trad channels and a lot of trad content out there. The second thing is I'm not bitter about traditionalist Catholicism at all. I disagree with it on certain points. I wish I had found Orthodoxy sooner. And so at some level, I'm bitter with myself for not having explored Orthodoxy when I was exploring Catholicism, because I really didn't do my due diligence on Orthodoxy. And I think that's true of a lot of people. The combination of factors that leads us to converting to one faith or the other is, immense, right? It's a great variety of things that go into a conversion. And accordingly, do I wish that I had found Orthodoxy sooner? Yes, but I'm not bitter towards my traditionalist Catholic friends because it really was a great place to develop morally, to learn about ancient Christianity, to experience worship that was different, that is different from contemporary American evangelical worship, right? Or even contemporary mainline Protestant worship, which is what the Novus Ordo Mass really is. Sorry. But, I'm not bitter about my time there. And third, I don't really think that traditionalism is a cult. There certainly are cults that are attached to the traditionalist movement. I wouldn't include in that the SSPX group. In my experience, SSPX Catholics are pretty normal people. They're very intense with their faith and they're very devout. But, other than that, it's, I wouldn't call it cultish. I would say that there are, communities that develop to be cultish, but almost within all of them, there are people that are kind of on the peripheries that don't really fall into that category at all. Excuse me. I would say that that's also true of pretty much any religious group. You'll have little pockets of believers that sort of develop their own internal rules, and you're either in or out. But by and large, I wouldn't say that traditionalism is a cult. Are there some weird areas of it? Yeah, Sedevacantism, you can get into some weird areas. But then again, I've known Sedevacantists that were just perfectly well-adjusted, normal, non-culty, people that followed what they believed was right. And I'd say that the biggest difference for me between a cult and a non-cult is whether you're doing something because of the group dynamic and because of manipulation, versus whether you're doing something because you think it's right from your own conscience, whether or not it's coming from your own freedom. And I think that's I think that's true of most traditionalists. And so I'm not really of the opinion that traditionalism is a cult. I can see where certain traditionalist communities can feel like cults and can be cult-y. But I can also see where, especially a child or a young person trying to conform their lives to, very strict religious principles, why they would feel like that was something so radically different from the surrounding society that they'll conclude that they were in a cult. I mean, fundamentally, these feelings come from the differences between the society that you're in versus the surrounding society, not from anything about the society itself, right? Is being Amish being in a cult? If you apply some of the same standards, well, some people would say yes, some people would say no. I would probably say no. So I don't really view traditionalism as a cult. So that's another reason why I don't consider myself ex-trad in the same way. I would also say that I don't think everything about the traditionalist Catholic movement, how shall I put this? I don't think that, well, I'll put it this way. I don't think that the traditionalist Catholic movement is somehow uniquely dangerous. It isn't. I mean, compared to being any other false religion other than Orthodoxy, being traditionalist Catholic, there are actually some really good things about it in terms of introducing you to the ancient Christian faith, in terms of developing a habit of prayer. That's something that's emphasized in traditionalist Catholicism, in terms of accepting the tradition of the fathers as being a source of revelation. I think traditionalist Catholicism sure beats modern Roman Catholicism in a lot of ways. But, I don't agree with it. But I don't think that everything about it is necessarily bad or harmful. I think it ultimately led me to Orthodoxy in a lot of ways. And I know, I'm sure Michael Lofton is going to pick up on that quote and say, see, I told you it leads to Orthodoxy. Well, yeah, I would say traditionalist Roman Catholicism is a lot better than modern Roman Catholicism in a lot of ways. But yeah, I don't think everything about it is bad or false. And it's not going to be the take on this channel to sort of try to shock you with things about traditionalist Catholicism. I more just want to share with you how it led me into Orthodoxy and why that's a good thing. So, and another difference between this channel and Xtrad channels that I think is important to acknowledge. So I mentioned it at the first how I didn't grow up in traditionalist Catholicism, so I don't have similar experiences. There's another side to that, which is that I don't have any trauma from my experience as a traditionalist Catholic. And so while I can acknowledge that people did experience trauma and empathize with them, and I'm not going to try and explain it away. I would say that in many instances, what I'm hearing is just people whose lifestyles don't really accord with any version of Christianity. And so, of course, traditionalist Catholicism really isn't going to work out. So I, acknowledging that, it didn't really traumatize me at all, right? It's something that I'm glad I left because I found the truth. But generally speaking, going to church was going to church. Generally speaking, I sang in the choir and was a choir director. I taught in a traditionalist Catholic school. I enjoyed my time. I, then went out and hung out with friends, and I had girlfriends, and I, had a perfectly, well, maybe not perfectly normal because I'm kind of a theology nerd. So maybe no part of my life is going to be entirely perfectly normal. But, as far as things go, it was pretty good time, So, I don't, if you're looking for content that's just going to be, again, trying to shock you with childhood trauma of being, or any trauma of being traditionalist Catholic, I don't have it. I may talk about disagreements and toxic aspects of the community that I saw, but always with the acknowledgement that similar sorts of things are found in the Orthodox convert community, and we have to be completely upfront with that. But again, I don't have those same traumas, and so I can't share them here. Again, without being unfeeling towards those who do have those childhood and early adulthood traumas, or traumatic experiences. I don't, I certainly don't want to discount those, but they're not mine. And finally, I would say this. My viewpoint on social issues, on moral issues, on most doctrinal issues, with a few exceptions, well, actually, probably with more than a few, but with relatively few exceptions, those haven't changed a whole lot since being traditionalist Catholic. Some of them have, some of them haven't, or some of them have become a little more nuanced becoming Orthodox. I think Orthodoxy has a little more balance in its views than traditionalist Catholicism, because of course traditionalist Catholicism is a kind of a newbie thing from the past 60 years. I know that's going to drive some traditionalist Catholics crazy, but it's true, right? The traditionalist Catholic movement and it having sort of a monolithic view of certain issues, that's a new thing. That's certainly not, from the ancient church, even though your liturgy and your practices and many of your beliefs are and so forth. But, it's still a relatively new thing. And many of the priests are new converts. Many of the people are new converts. They don't have the experience or the discernment of years to balance things out. And so, I do think that Orthodoxy has a little bit more experience and a little more discernment on those topics. But generally speaking, right, we're on social issues, moral issues, we agree. And so you're not going to hear me bashing on Catholics for being pro-life, or for being for traditional family, or any of those sorts of things. That's just not going to be the content you find here. So, with that being said, I am so glad that I found the Orthodox faith. I'm glad in a way that I came to it through traditionalist Catholicism, because I had a great intro into ancient Christianity that ultimately led me out of the novelty that is the modern Roman Catholic Church and the traditionalist Roman Catholic faith. But nonetheless, I am not going to be on here spouting the same things that you'll hear on other X-Trad channels. So if you're looking for a conservative, pro-Christian, pro-faith channel, this is the other side of that. If you're looking for all of those things, but nonetheless a former traditionalist to talk about traditionalism, this is the channel for you. So be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for those notifications. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week. I've got one or two book reviews that might be coming down the line. Just some things that I managed to pick up for my personal library that had been in storage. And so hopefully you all will enjoy that. And that's coming a little bit sooner. So something a little more lighthearted. With that being said, I'll say Kalispera. Have a very good Saturday and a very holy weekend. Be sure to go to Divine Liturgy if you've got one near you, or say Typica if you don't. So have a good night. Valete.